Striving for mediocrity in a world of excellence, this is the Chaser Report.
Hello and welcome to the Chaser Report. It is Wednesday the 3rd of August. We have Charles Firth, Dom Knight and Chris Taylor still here. Yesterday's podcast promised politics at some point. We didn't quite get to it. There was lots of fruit and vegetable themed discussion. But today, I think we should look at what happened a couple of days ago now, which is that Anthony Albanese has had the best news poll for a new PM since the start of news polls.
Oh, really?
61% approval. You can imagine how much it hurt the Australian to have to write that. Albo had the strongest start ever.
Was their pie chart, did they still have 61% as the minority percentage?
I think they probably did.
Now, what was Hawkey? Hawkey was pretty high, I thought.
Well, they may not have had news poll back then. But it's really about the notion of first cab out of the rank. Normally there's buyer's remorse, right? Normally you have a PM. Like with Kevin Rudd, very popular
immediate.
Until he started being PM and saying, okay, guys, ice Fovos. And then everyone went, oh, no, what have we done?
Yeah, it was the election night speech. That,
Yeah, it was.
That
That
ruined
was
his
in the
prime
poll.
ministership.
Yeah, right. 1 second into winning.
I thought it might, I don't think it was news poll, it might have been the essential poll. They did have Albo take a bit of a dip. When there was all that ridiculous conjecture about him being overseas a bit too much during the floods. And I think it was the Guardian essential poll sort of did have him take a little bit of a dip.
Was it from 99% to 97% in the Guardian readers?
But I mean, not really surprising given, still very much in the honeymoon period and doing a lot of sort of aspirational sort of, it's a lot of fixing diplomacy. It's the voice, promising a referendum for an Indigenous voice to Parliament. The more interesting stat is what Dutton's polling is. Have you got that, Dom?
I want to get on to Dutton, but before we do, I want to, my theory with Albo jumping up so high is that no one knew who he was. Because he got the lowest Labor vote in a very long time. And I think a lot of Australians post-election have gone, oh, this Prime Minister bloke seems all right. They've never heard of Albo before.
But I think also
and he seems all right.
It was that the Libs and actually most of the press, like the Murdoch press, was so histrionic. Like, the world will collapse if you elect Labor.
It won't be easy.
It won't be easy under Albanese, and suddenly it's like, oh, it's exactly the same, except we're not embarrassed by our Prime Minister each day.
I wonder if it's that. So it's not necessarily a massive vote of confidence in Albo, even though it's partly that, clearly. But it's, I forgot what
just
normal politics or functional politics looks like. It's not like the shit show every day.
Competent government.
Blame shifting or a news scandal about pork barreling. It's sort of, it's people on not doing cheap political point scoring against their...
Governing.
Yeah, governing.
Governing.
A novel idea for a government, but they've been governing.
Yes.
And with an eye as much on international relations as domestic politics, and which I think Australians, having just gone through the biggest global event any of us will ever go through in the pandemic, realise that we are part of a world. We're not the insular politics that Morrison tried to create because he was on surer footing there. Albo's sort of, getting back out on the world stage, and Penny Wong's doing, great work there.
But hang on, is she though? Because the amazing thing about Penny Wong is that all she seems to need to do is actually just turn up, have a cup of tea. It's extraordinary.
But so this is the thing. It's
very impressive.
My dad is an expert in Pacific politics, right?
Right.
And he reckons that the key thing to be an Australian leader visiting a Pacific nation is simply to know the names of the people that you're visiting. And
how low must the bar have been?
And actually, apparently, no, Julie Bishop did.
She'd be great at it.
She would do on the plane. She'd learn all the names, and she was actually quite good at it. But then after Julie Bishop was Maurice Payne, right? Apparently, she never once, she did not learn anyone's name. She would hop off, and she would also have these huge security details. So
Aren't there just staffers whose job it is? Like the Tony Hale character in Veep. They
yes,
literally whisper in the
Yeah.
correct, not only the name, but the correct pronunciation. Surely she'd have someone like that.
No.
Well, the Pacific leaders didn't have anyone either, but as soon as they started talking to her, they just went, Pain. And it was all fun.
No, but so the bureaucrats would do a briefing paper. She'd never read the briefing paper. So, and
If true,
That's what I'm thinking.
that's
The bar
astonishing.
must have been, no disrespect to Penny Wong, but she could probably have handled a far more complicated situation. But it seemed as though
But
upon touching down and shaking her hand, it was like, well, we're back with Australia again. That's all we wanted.
Because the other thing is, so Maurice Payne would require a huge entourage and a whole lot of security detail and be all like, we've got to keep everyone from touching her. She's the minister. And Penny Wong just literally would rock up with her and one advisor and do the whole handshake everyone who came up to her. And that was also seen as like, oh my God,
So humble.
Yeah, she's so humble and just wants to be, liked.
Someone told me I had a really interesting dinner with someone who was formerly in the New Zealand government. And New Zealand is the only country, I think this is true even to this day, I might be wrong, fact check me if not, but at the time I was having this conversation, they were the only country ever to secure a free trade agreement with China. No one else could ever get one. And the reason he believed they got it was sort of that he rocked up alone. He didn't have any entourage. Very Kiwi. He's sort of just with an esky maybe.
Yeah.
And
a chili bin. He bought a chili bin with him.
Yeah. And it wasn't sort of this chess game of, trying to It was just very humble, going, oh, we've got this, you've got that.
We've got milk.
We've got wool. And
do you want to tell us electronics? We've got some wool. We've got some wool and some chili bin.
And they were just sort
You've
of...
got cheap shit.
It just felt like they weren't trying to bullshit them. So China said, oh, they seem trustworthy. And and they got the deal that no one else could get. So there is something to that. I wonder if, a lot of sort of brinkmanship is now a bit dick swingy.
Yes.
And that's not a good strategy. Maybe it should just be literally sitting down. Maybe they should never take place in opulent lounge rooms. They should just go to the local dive bar.
Yeah, just go to the dive bar.
Order a couple of crownies and just have a chat.
Well, this is the other thing that Penny Wong was quite extraordinary in doing is because remember, she kept on hopping on the plane the first few weeks.
Yeah, she went back over and over again.
And frequent fly points would be amazing right now.
Yeah, pretty good.
She might actually know the name genuinely by now.
She's the only person that Qantas has actually successfully transported in the last 6 months.
But she also went to Malaysia, right? And instead of going to Kuala Lumpur or where, like that, she went to the place where her family originally comes from in Malaysia.
I think it's Kinabalu or something.
Yeah, Kinabalu. And apparently that's a whole thing in Malaysia. The whole, because there's quite a large Malaysian diaspora all around the world. And the whole idea of going back to where you originally come from.
She went to her old school or something, didn't she? Yeah, it's very sweet.
And it just rocketed around Malaysia as, oh my gosh, she's one of us. She knows how what we value and stuff like that, and played it really well.
And yet, when ScoMo was over in England and went to an old cemetery or a church, looking up his family tree, that wasn't received the same way. That was seen as a rort. How dare the guy on our dime be looking up family history? So it's sort of the same thing.
Yeah, you're right.
And yet, different cultural responses to the same incident.
So I was just checking, because I thought we did. We've got a free trade agreement with China, but probably got it much later than New Zealand.
Oh, we do have.
I'm just wondering, it mustn't be worth very much given the amount of shit we've been through in that relationship over the past few years. We do still have a free trade agreement, but yet we don't trade with China much at all.
They announced just last week that they're going to start buying our coal again. So
well done,
we've
Penny.
got that. That's an achievement for the Labor that we get to pollute the world.
So you asked about Dutton's numbers, and interestingly, preferred PM, he's dropped 17 points versus Morrison.
Wow, so he's more
Albo's 59, Dutton's 25, and unsurprisingly, a lot of people are like, neither, thank you very much.
Imagine being more unpopular than Morrison.
During your honeymoon. We all assumed he'd get to that figure, but he's there already.
Yeah, it's quite extraordinary.
That's...
So Dutto's the 25% man is Dutton's position now.
Okay, so how many, remember the old parlance of Turnbull and Abbott, how many news polls can you be? How long do you give Dutton, if he stays at 20, in the 20s, for 30 news polls in a row?
But won't it just be they will definitely replace him about 6 months out from the next election? That's
his job. He's the Brendan Nelson in this situation.
Yeah.
He's the sacrificial potato.
Yeah.
But I must say, I do feel I want to stick up for Peter Dutton a little bit, right? Because I've been thing about Peter Dutton is if you hate him, hate him. Don't hate him because he looks scary.
No.
Don't hate him because he's bald. Don't hate him because he's a bit tubby. Because I've got to say, as time goes on, he and I are bearing an increasing resemblance, and it troubles me enormously.
When I arrived today, I thought, oh, Peter Dutton's the guest in the podcast.
Yeah. Admittedly, I'd never achieved 25% popularity, but
The Chaser Report. Less news, less often.
What would you do as a strategy if you were Peter Dutton? How would you claw back that lost support?
Gee, that's a good question. I mean, realistically, Albo's not going to stay at the numbers he's at. There is obviously a bit of a post-election bump. We were all very confident that, in 6 months' time, there will start to be some trips in the government, as all governments experience. It's just impossible to be perfect as a government.
Ask Dominic Perrottet, the New South Wales Premier, about that.
So his best strategy in a way is to Stephen Bradbury it and just wait for Albo to sort of trip. But that's sort of a poor answer. If you were strategizing,
Do you think he needs a new rhyme for Albanese? Like, because
you'll feel queasy.
yeah,
Oh, you feel that's good.
Yeah. Yeah, no.
I'm trying. All the other ones that came to mind were bad
Sleazy.
puns on Italian things. So no, but I mean the thing that Albo did actually now we can say we know that the Abbott approach worked back then.
Yes.
But the Albo approach worked really well, which was to choose specific things to disagree with and to wave a lot of things through. Whereas day one in the parliament he's going, building unions. You can't tell me that the ordinary Australian gives a shit about the ABC, right? Like it was a very strange attack.
Well, the one the day we're recording this in Parliament during question time today, the line of attack from Dutton is all about cost of living and the fuel excise, which is interesting territory. Given there's obviously a very strong argument to be made that the previous government set in train the inflation that the country is experiencing at the moment. But again, if you were advising him, you'd say Albo can't keep saying the previous government caused this for much longer.
He's got about 6
You're allowed
months,
to do that
I
for
reckon.
about 6 months. 6 months max. It partly because it just gets you look weak as a leader if you're just constantly blaming your predecessor for everything that's going wrong. But also it'll just become a bit boy who cried wolf, sort of it will fall on deaf ears. So I think what Dutton will try to do is create, like in a way, he's been given a gift because the economy that the government's inherited is so bad and getting worse. Like interest rates are only going to climb. Inflation is not going down anytime soon. So he can really the myth that Labor's terrible at managing the economy, which is sort of wrong, is finally possibly going to be spun to be true because the economy is about to be as bad as it was back under the Keating days in terms of high interest rates and stuff.
Yes. So
he could be the John Hewson.
Yeah. Wow. Houston, I'd love that analogy.
This podcast might have been more relatable when we were talking about lettuce. But anyway, no, look, it is interesting to think of what he would do. I mean, I wouldn't bother doing much for the first few months. It's get your team together.
He just went on a long holiday. Dutton only just came back. Like his numbers plummeted even while he was away.
That's weird because normally you go up when you're not around.
Particularly in Dutton's case, I think the less he says, the better he'll go.
So this probably is his honeymoon.
Maybe.
As good as it gets.
Do you think he can get in the teens?
Yeah, that's right.
What's the lowest anyone, like I guess Billy McMahon, they weren't polling the way we are now, but he would have to be
down there.
Down there. Oh, that's as bad as I've ever seen.
25% is pretty terrible, yeah. The thing that they've both got going for them is, I guess, who are the alternatives? In Dutton's case, I was reading Peter Van Onselen, which I occasionally do, just to find out what the other half thinks. And he was making the point there's almost no all the likable people in the coalition are in the Senate.
Out.
So all the more popular Josh Frydenbergs and so on who might have challenged are all out. And the people the moderates who might actually want to bump Dutton off are all in the Senate, so can't.
Except Bridget Archer, who is the moderate who always threatens to cross the floor.
And she keep on voting against the Liberal Party? Wouldn't that be a problem as the leader of the Liberal Party?
But wouldn't that
if you kept on just...
But what a great brand to boost your numbers. I will lead and I'll do everything that the Liberal Party doesn't want me to. I'd vote for it.
Yeah, I would too.
I mean, that's how Barnaby Joyce became Nationals leader, wasn't it?
Turnbull promised to do and didn't.
Yes,
Like we all liked Turnbull because we said, oh no, because he's statesman-like and he's got good
gonna
views.
change everything
But he
around.
just never actually crossed the floor
Yeah.
to vote against the appalling policies of the coalition. Whereas Bridget Archer will.
Yes.
I'd love her to be the leader of the party and be the only person as leader who crosses the floor, and none of the people under her follow.
That would be very entertaining. And I guess that the other thing is the 61%, I mean, this record figure for Albo. This means that it'll be another couple of weeks before the first challenge, right? Doesn't it? Doesn't it buy him a little bit of
this-
security?
This buys Albo an extra couple of weeks. So,
Yeah. I think if you're Tanya Plibersek, you're going, oh, look, wait till October. Although under the new rules, they can't, can they? Isn't there?
Yeah, no, it's
very hard to dump
he's
an
safe.
underperforming PM. This is the Rudd poison pill that he put in.
Well, it was actually Albo who came up with this poison pill.
Was it really?
Yes, it was. During the I don't know
what's
whether
the
you
rule?
remember, but when they first knocked off Rudd, remember how Rudd was elected in 2007
Yeah.
with this thumping majority, and then in the first term,
Yes.
Gillard turned around and knocked
Yeah.
Rudd off, right?
Via the faceless
And
man.
As
And-
soon as this news poll dropped, really.
And Anthony Albanese stood essentially alone, unique on the left, and went, in good conscience, I cannot vote against Rudd as a prime minister in the first term. Like, this will come back to bite us, right? And
he was right.
And he was right, and it turned out to be very prescient. And then when all those things happened late in the Gillard term where Rudd was really trying to...
When Rudd-
Yeah.
Proved that it was wrong to get rid of prime ministers in their first term by doing exactly the same thing.
Anthony Albanese came in and said, well, actually, let's set up some rules that mean that this never happens again, and use that sort of sentiment of, yes, we really stuffed up before, to actually put in this thing, which he is now the, recipient of
this
the
is
advantage of.
The one line in Albo's CV that he never talked about before he got elected prime minister was that he was deputy PM to Rudd the second time Rudd was in.
Yes,
No one
that's
ever
right.
remembers that. Albo, for a few months, was the second most powerful man in the country.
So if you're Bill Shorten or Tanya Plibersek now, and you have aspirations to lead the party, how do you go about that under the new rules?
You wait.
You wait till Albo is either elected out or resigns.
Has he got to
There
lose,
must be
lose
a-
an election?
No, so
Surely there's
there's
a little, in case of emergency, here's
Yeah.
a knife behind the glass.
In case of Boris Johnson,
Yeah, what are those?
is it like a 3/4 or something? It's a higher bar, I think.
It's a higher bar. The only thing is that to get rid of that higher bar would just require a vote of the majority.
Oh, so
right?
that's what happened in the
That's
the
what happened
Conservatives.
with the
yeah.
coalition. Yeah. So or the
But in the
You
UK,
change the
in
rules.
The UK,
You
yeah.
change the
They've
rules
got a
before you
high
change
bar,
leader.
Yeah, you have
which can
to-
be removed by a vote of just the majority. Oh, that's
Yeah.
not quite so safe, is it?
So it's not entirely safe, but even just doing that, like there's just because there's that extra layer of complexity, it sort of places a slightly higher bar on the whole budget. But yes, if things got really bad, they would just jettison all those rules.
Do you think we're the only media show or outlet that after this result that Albo's just recorded is already talking about
how
a
to knock
leadership
him off.
spill?
Yeah.
Like that's like that. You remember on election night on the ABC's coverage where Lee Sales asked Tanya Plibersek, where did Labor go wrong? And Tanya just sort of did a double take and go, the numbers I'm looking at, I don't think we went wrong. I think we're winning this election. And I think we're doing a Lee Sales. We're currently going, Albo's just got a 61% approval rating, and we're talking about how Plibersek can knock him off.
Well, that's because the way Labor works is the things going well are just a temporary illusion, right? Because they're still Labor.
They're also not comfortable with things going well.
No.
They're at their
They're
best
not
when
used to
they're
it.
on the back foot, when they're in the doldrums. It doesn't sit naturally with them to be competent or to be popular.
There'll be someone in Sussex Street going, well, this Albo guy's doing well. I reckon you could just immediately transfer those same positive numbers to my guy.
Yeah.
The question that I have
Or
is,
woman in
do you
Canada.
remember under Rudd and then Gillard, one of the most hilarious sort of subplots was all those corrupt union officials who would have, credit cards.
Yes.
That
And
they then
actual-
used to buy
actual brown
brothel
paper bags
services.
with cash.
Craig
Craig Thompson, and
Thompson,
the credit card.
All those
the
people.
whole health union.
Yeah,
Kathy
Jackson.
Jackson.
Jax, yeah. There doesn't seem to be any subplot like that yet.
Yet.
Okay.
No, because the union movement, I'm sure, is entirely... They've learnt from those mistakes and they've put in processes and probity to make sure that there won't be any corrupt union officials ever again.
So impatient, Charles Firth. Like, give them another month. There'll be corruption.
Yeah, okay,
There'll
good.
be,
Well, they need corruption because they're going to set up a whole new commission for
I know.
it. So.
It'd be embarrassing to set it up and then not do any corruption.
And that is the history of those sorts of royal commissions and is that actually the government that sets it up then always gets done for it.
The Nick Greiner
Yeah.
thing.
Well, and also like even remember
Andrews is now having issues with the one in Victoria. Yeah.
in the Union Royal Commission. No, it was the Superannuation Royal Commission early on in the coalition government's thing. Netted all the commercial retail funds which they were trying to protect. And all the union funds were fine. It turned out to be really good value.
But I must say, to Albo's credit, the thing that he's doing that I think is very impressive and very wise, he's saying to everyone, don't waste your time. Get on with it, crack on with it. Let's not rest on our laurels. Get things done because you never know when he'll be out of
I
office.
loved that.
In his case, it may be weeks. but good on him for actually trying to have a legacy week by week.
It was the Australian Parliament version of Dead Poets Society with the Carpe Diem speech that Robin Williams gave in that film of, you're not here for very long, so make it last where you are. I loved a very working class sort of Albo version of that going, you probably will be knifed tomorrow or lose in the next election, so make it count. It was sort of, it was a bit Coach Taylor from Friday Night Lights. I really liked that, yeah.
And knowing Labor, he won't have talked over. So enjoy it while it lasts, Albo. Gears from Road, we're part of the Acast Creator Network. Catch you tomorrow.